Secretary Boockvar, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with us today. Now, the election is just around the corner. What is it that you want every voter to know before they cast their ballot?
Oh, so many things. Well, thank you again for, nothing is more important right now than making sure that every Pennsylvanian knows that there are more safe and secure ways that they can vote now than at any time in our history. So Pennsylvanians, thanks to Act 77, historic bipartisan legislation passed in the fall, Pennsylvanians actually now have three ways that they can vote. And every one of those ways is safe, secure, and accessible. So they could vote by mail, which they could start today. Go to votespa.com, apply for your absentee or mail-in ballot, fill it out, return it as quickly as possible. You could vote early in person as soon as your county has printed its ballots. Many have already done so this week. A few may be starting next week. So call your county election office, find out where their offices are, what their hours are. You could go in person, apply for your ballot, cast it all in one visit to the polling place on your schedule. And then the third way, of course, is the good old-fashioned way. Vote in person on November 3rd. There'll be masks, gloves, face shields. It will be safe. It will be secure. Wear a mask, be safe, vote, exercise your voice, and go home.
Okay, well, first of all, the first part of the process is to register to vote. And could you take us through that for the folks that may be voting for the first time?
Sure. Yeah. So actually, and that's a great point because it's the first deadline before us. So Act 77 changed the registration deadline. So Pennsylvanians now have more time to register to vote. So the deadline is October 19th. So you still have happy October, by the way. You still have 19 days to register to vote, to check your registration, to change your registration. Go to votespa.com. You could do that online. You could also do it by mail or in person at your county election office. And if you don't have the contact information, you don't know where your county election office is, on votespa.com, you could click on your county. It will show you a drop-down menu. It will tell you all the information you need to know. But October 19th, don't forget to register.
So now you're registered to vote and you decided to vote in person. You show up at the polling place. Will you be asked to show an ID?
So only if it's your first time voting in that polling place. So Pennsylvania law requires the first time you're registered in that polling place that you will be asked to show ID. And there's a wide range of choices. I mean, certainly driver's license, your passport, things like that. But it also could include other forms of ID. And if you go to votespa.com, it will tell you all the choices. So yes, after that, you won't be asked to show ID. You'll just be asked to sign the poll book like any other voter.
Now, there's a phrase that has popped up very recently. It's called poll watcher. Can you define that and tell us more about that and see if, are there any regulations covering poll watching?
Sure, yes, there are. So poll watchers are defined in the statute and they have specific rights on election day in the polling place. And then there are party representatives who have certain rights during the count. There's nothing that exists now. So these are positions that exist really solely for election day and the count. And what happens is they're officially designated, usually nominated by either a party or a candidate, but they're officially designated by the county. They're granted a special certificate. They might even have a badge or something, depending on the county. And again, this doesn't happen until a couple of days before election day. So if you've seen some things recently in the news, poll watchers literally don't exist right now.
There is a lot of concern about mail-in voting. This is the first time that any Pennsylvanian can mail in his or her vote. And there has been an incident in Luzerne County about discarded absentee ballots. What is your understanding of that incident?
Sure. Yeah. And I will say, I think the investigation is still going on to some degree, but the initial reports that we received are that there was a mailroom, a new seasonal temporary worker hired in the mailroom and these ballots, just so that you understand, these are ballots that went out to remote areas of the globe. They're called they're called write-in ballots, and they go out long before the ballot is certified because they're going to remote areas of the globe to certain overseas voters. And it's so they don't look like regular ballots, like they don't look like the ballot you're going to get in the mail with a special envelope with that official election ballot envelopes, because overseas voters, particularly in these remote areas, may be sending it back in their own envelope. So what happened was this temporary worker, and again, this is the initial reports, the temporary worker was hired on like a Monday. He didn't recognize, he wasn't trained, and he didn't recognize these as ballots, and he discarded them. And what happened was the election director did all the right things. She saw it. She immediately reported it. They immediately started being investigated. You know, they reported it to law enforcement. It's been investigated. And they reached out to us and asked us for extra training. And they terminated that employee. So it was a limited thing to that temporary worker who was a contractor. It clearly was the wrong thing. We need to make sure it never happens again. But the county did all the right things.
Mm-hmm. One of the aspects of that I had a question about is relates to the regulations regarding mail-in ballots. So when you mail in your ballot, as I understand it, you have to put the ballot in what's called a security envelope and then put that envelope into another envelope. If you don't do that, then that is called, if you don't use the security envelope, then your ballot is called what is called a naked ballot. And I think the Pennsylvania Supreme Court upheld the ruling that any naked ballot without that security envelope must be discarded.
Correct. So this is, you know, we could definitely use everybody's help in getting the word out there. And there's been a lot of creative, the expression naked ballot, I think may have been coined here, you know, and it's great. And so there's all kinds of creative people doing things with naked advertising. God bless them. I'm remaining clothed in this conversation. But yes, it's basically you need two envelopes for your ballot to count in Pennsylvania. And the inner envelope is there specifically to protect your secrecy. So all it said, it's a white envelope. It's smaller than the other envelope. You fill out your ballot, put it in the inner white envelope, seal it, and then put that whole inner envelope in the outer envelope. So that, and then on the outer envelope, that's where you'll see it's pre-return address to the County Board of Elections. And you have to sign your name, the voter's declaration, fill out the information and date it. So kind of 2 points are critical to making sure your ballot is counted. One, make sure you have two envelopes, both envelopes in there. And two, make sure you sign that outer envelope, because if you leave out either of those steps, your ballot will not be counted.
Mm-hmm. Now we go into the polling place, and when you show up to vote in person on November 3rd, tell us about that process in most, if not all, the counties of Pennsylvania.
So on November 3rd, you know, one of the things that people have been asking is in some counties, as you may know, they had consolidations, widespread consolidations of polling places during the primary. And as everybody knows in Pennsylvania, during the primary, we were in the middle of the surge of the pandemic. So a lot of the county election offices were still on lockdown. There were a lot of closures of, you know, all the buildings and, you know, offices and organizations where they might have had polling places normally. So there were a lot of consolidations allowed only for that day. And that law, Act 12 of 2020, that allowed those consolidations expired that day. It only applied to June 2nd. So people are going to see a much more, many more polling places closer to normal. So most counties are either planning the usual amount of polling places that they always have or close to that. Now, they might not be in the same place as, like, if you've been voting in the same senior facility for the last 20 years, it might not be at that senior facility because of COVID-19, but it will be somewhere else in your community. And you can go to votespa.com, check your polling place locator to find out information. Wait a couple of weeks as the counties are finalizing that. And you can also call your county, and a lot of them are doing mailings and postings and so forth to notify the voters. But when you walk in the door, wear a mask. You're going to see the same kind of social distancing and protections that you see when you go to the supermarket or the bank. All the poll workers are going to have masks, face shields, gloves, the sneeze guards, the plastic dividers that protect both of you. There'll be hand sanitizer. There'll be cleansing, cleanser for the tables and the systems and so forth, and they'll be taped to mark social distance. So treat it like you would anything else. Wash your hands before you go, wear a mask, vote, wash your hands afterwards, and just stay safe.
And finally, just to get back to the idea of security of the ballot, there's so much anxiety about the security of the vote and whether one's vote is going to be counted. So what can you say to allay those fears?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I want to say that no matter how you vote, and I'll re-mention that there are three ways you can vote: by mail, early in person, or in the polling place on election day. All three of those methods are safe, secure, and accessible. And so they're all slightly different. So for voting by mail, in Pennsylvania, we don't send ballots to everybody. And I like the process we have in Pennsylvania because you have to apply first. And when you apply for your ballot, you have to either give your driver's license ID number, your social security last four digits, or some other form of acceptable ID. And you're being checked against those databases as well as against your voter record before you even get a ballot. So that provides eligibility checking and security right there. Same for when you vote in person. You've registered, ahead of time, as we were talking about. If you're a first-time voter, you show ID, and of course you sign in the poll book. So there's lots of different ways that we make sure that the security is there, that only eligible people can vote. And then we also have processes to make sure that every vote is counted accurately. And we all agree that that is the most important thing we could possibly do. And we also have now voter verifiable paper ballot voting systems in every polling place in the state. So, and you can go to votespa.com, the county dropdown that I mentioned earlier. We have 67 individual web pages. So if you haven't voted in a couple of years or even a year, go to your county on votespa.com and click on the new voting systems, and it will tell you it will give you how-to instructions. It will show you videos of how to vote. If you're a voter with a disability, it will tell you accessibility options that you'll have available when you walk in the door of your polling place. So lots of choices for Pennsylvania. All the information you need is on votespa.com.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us here in northeastern and central Pennsylvania. That's Secretary of State Kathy Boockvar. Well, good luck as you go forward as we go through this important election.
Thank you so much for all you're doing, and everybody vote.